All right, I am here with Peter Joseph, my good friend Peter. Peter, you and I have known each other for several years, though it was mostly through the competitive shuffleboard arena. But now I'm interviewing you about other things. You are the creator of... So I know you've been introduced to various crowds, but I want to introduce you to the Redacted audience. So I want to start off there, start back a few years. You're the creator of the Zeitgeist, which I looked up, and it means general spirit of the culture. So having invented American culture, why make videos of shots to the balls so prevalent on the internet? Why did you do that to our culture?
Just trying to satisfy what people want. You know, we've got to kowtow to the dominant primitive forces that keep that payroll coming in through advertising and marketing that seems to control everyone's value systems today.
You do.
So, you know, I, as a social critic, that's, I guess, my typical distinction. I inadvertently fell into it because I made a performance piece. I did this thing in Lower Manhattan. It was called Zeitgeist, and I put it online for free after the performance was done. I'm a musician as well, so it was kind of a vaudevillian thing where I performed at the same time. And then it went viral, and it was nuts. And all the lawsuit threats came in because I didn't own any of the rights to the footage that was in the film. And over the course of time, I weeded it all out, and then that kind of sparked a push from me. I was more apathetic. You know, I paid attention to what was happening in society, but I was very George Carlin-esque. I was just like, okay, that's not of my concern. That's out there. You know, that was my naivety.
Well, so you're making it sound like you were kind of dragged into it almost. I mean, you did care enough to create the performance piece, but it was kind of the millions of views that dragged you into this area of creation.
Yeah. I realized that there were a lot of people that were touched by it, and I thought to myself, well, you know, this is obviously something I care about, maybe even more on a subconscious level than conscious. So I went on and made a sequel called Zeitgeist Addendum, attempted to talk about solutions as well and get to the root of the problem, which, as we'll probably discuss in this interview, is really the foundation of our socioeconomic system, which is free market economics. And from there, I made the final of the trilogy called Zeitgeist Moving Forward. And then within those two films, a movement started. Again, this is just random stuff. I didn't expect the movement to have any legs. But as of now, there are about 530,000 subscribers through our email list. And we had our 7th annual Z Day, which you did a little webcast for, which was great. We did it in Berlin this year. Yeah. So things keep plugging along. And, you know, I feel pushed, but it's also rewarding. It's also stressful. I would admit that. It's a lot to take in because you're dealing with a macro social shift, which is what we promote, which is the only solution, I'm afraid, but I won't delve into that quite yet.
Well, let's get into the free market economics. You say you're opposed to that, which makes you anti-capitalist, so clearly you're a supervillain. Is it you more of a Skeletor or a Gargamel? Although I think he might have just been a weird, confused pedophile, but...
Yeah, Gargamel, he saved himself with the cat, of course. I did like the cat. But, you know, I don't know. You can't talk about the value systems of people, which really is what the free market, the worst of the free market is it's changed people's values. You know what I mean? It changes the way people look at each other. It changes the way people look at the world. And it's based on this old, what's called Malthusian premise, which is that there's not enough to go around. Human population will keep spreading, and there will never be enough resources. Therefore, there will always be an underclass that we should pretty much exploit, and we should let die off without actually telling them that. Then you couple that with social Darwinism, which came forward, which everyone misinterpreted to say survival of the fittest meant you're just going to be as mean and as competitive as possible, which is not at all what he meant. And you put these things together, and you have this horrible value system disorder that's not only causing complete exploitation, destruction of the environment, because as you put it in your web address, it's like a hot dog eating competition where we've run out of hot dogs, so we have to start eating each other, so it never ends. And that's pretty much an apt analogy. And of course, on the human side, human exploitation, we really haven't evolved from the slavery state. So we're so caustic with each other. Even when we think we're being ethical in our business acumen, we are really just looking to exploit any vulnerability, and the structure luckily supports that. So right now there's a big protest happening for lower wage workers in America, the fast food protests as they're being called gesturally, and it makes perfect sense that they're being so exploited because of the way the outcome of poverty reduces itself, the educational limitations. There's a natural underclass, in other words, that's structurally created, which serves the profit-seeking interests of the upper 1%, of the 1%, to use the language of Occupy. So it's not just people individually that look at each other and try to exploit each other, and they might think they're being nice about it, you know,
right,
just like you're in a mafia.
But CNBC, if I were a CNBC host right now, I'd go, well, look at this guy. You saw the news this week. The CEO just gave his workers a raise, the bottom level raise to $70,000 a year, and he brought his down from $1 million to $70,000 a year. And so he's done well for himself, and now he's giving back. And there you go. Capitalism works, right?
That's it. That's the end of the story. We can all go home. Philanthropy and the like. Actually, I think that word philanthropy is funny. You'll never meet a homeless philanthropist. A philanthropy is an idea that's been put forward only by the wealthy in an attempt to covertly kind of remove the idea that them having all this money to begin with is actually a problem in and of itself. The idea that the structure that allocates, these massive ratios in the income gap to very few people, you can't address that. That's apparently that's off limits. So we look to the philanthropists. And I admire people that do that. But of course, as you know, it's no different than walking down the street and giving a homeless person a quarter. In the long-term structure of things, it does absolutely nothing. The only type of respect I have anymore for anyone that opposes the system or wants to see change is to go after the root of it. And that's a dramatic alteration of the market premise itself. And of course, instantly when you say that, you're labeled a communist, as you've pointed out. So it's actually not that simple. There's no black and white here. There are ways. We promote a natural law resource-based economy. You can basically imitate the entire functionality of the market, which is really the exchange of ideas and information that people build upon to improve people's lives. But you can do that without money and without the exchange.
Okay, so resource-based economy sounds really awesome. I'd like you to explain it a little more for people that haven't heard of it. But what exactly would you stick in the stripper's G-string? I mean, would you just good thoughts? What do you stick in there?
That's a good question. Well, you might have just debunked my whole argument. But I submit that the stripper probably wouldn't exist if she didn't have to worry about money. But that's for a larger.
Oh, now you want to get rid of strippers?
Yeah.
You take away all the fun, Peter.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, resource-based economy goes back to the idea of a post-scarcity society, which is what this is really about. This is not a new idea. It goes back to the mid-19th century. There was a guy named John Etzler in 1833 that was talking about these ideas when he started to witness what was happening with machinery and how rapidly machinery was replacing human labor, which, by the way, is a big thorn in the side of modern capitalism because, yes, we are going to automate everything because it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. And that permanent underclass I've talked about is just going to get deeper and more angry, which will contribute to social destabilization. So with all those factors taken into account, there's a way if you can manage resources and use modern technological means to organize them and actually make it an economy. The definition of economy is the management of a household. It's actually taking account and being as efficient and sustainable and as productive as you can with every economic unit, if you will, whether it's labor, whether it's the resource itself. And this system doesn't do that whatsoever, first of all. So we have to at least align with that basic natural law premise that you need to be sustainable and you have to have maximum efficiency. And if you say that to a traditional economist today, what you'll really figure out is that sustainability, efficiency, and resource preservation are the enemies of everything that this system requires to keep moving forward, to keep people employed, to keep this growth thing going. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty much ass backwards when it comes to how we manage society. And the worst of it is by about 2030, based on all trend estimates, whether it's loss of biodiversity, whether it's an extrapolation of how deeply socially destabilized we're going to be if you actually track the riots and the protests and the effects that are happening to this. This is a new social analysis that I've been doing for a while. 2030, especially the energy crisis, the water crisis, the food crisis, 2030 is going to be crazy ugly if things don't change rapidly. So it's not just we want to make things better; it's that we have to make this change, or what's in store for with the 9 billion population ahead is going to be brutal. So
let's say we do start heading to that change. Obviously, it can't be overnight. Do you envision any half steps, or are there things you could see in the next year or two?
Well, we got to stop the wealth inequality before it completely destabilizes the culture and makes a very angry underclass and sets in a chain reaction that can, the word revolution or insurrection is about as close as you can get, but it's not just the individual anger, it's the pressures of scarcity that are about to merge too. And this is the perfect storm. So, the stability of society is preceded by the stability of our ecology, right? If we ran out of water, or if, like California right now where I am, if we have a massive water shortage, you're going to see some ugly behaviors start to emerge with people. And if you apply that to the global society, coupled with the anger that people now have towards the 1%, again, using that Occupy rhetoric, you have a very testy and turbulent situation that's fomenting. So in order to stop that, you need to at least have universal basic income right now. There needs to be a massive, willful tax on the exceptionally wealthy, and that money, which can easily be redistributed to really help a lot of people, is just that. I mean, the top 100 billionaires could end global extreme poverty 4 times over, as the statistics have proven. So this is just a basic logical thing. And I think if the wealthy want to maintain anything that they have for the future, when it really comes down to it, they would be willfully willing to give away a large percentage. While they're still going to be super wealthy, but forget this complete and utter excess. And that will slow it down for a little while.
Right, because
it's not a solution.
Instead, they're taking the golden goose, chopping it up, setting it on fire, and then humping its face.
Pretty much, yeah. The funny thing is that the more the system gets, the more fear that it comes in the system, the more insurrection, the more resource issues, the more outcry. The natural reaction of most of the wealthy is to want more and more and more. Actually, that's if they want to grab as much as they can, because they've been so indoctrinated into this lifestyle that they've come into because of their great wealth. So the relativity of this lifestyle thing isn't addressed. So I'm seeing it actually work the other way around. As much as I advocate this, I see the security and the militarization of the police and the World WTO and Davos. I see these conventions going to start to gravitate to more punitive actions towards the lower 1%, the lower classes, than what I've just suggested. That's what the trends would actually suggest. We can not do that. We can wake up and realize there are steps that can be made. I can go on a long tangent about that, but I'll stop there.
Okay, well, I wanted to ask you about where you could see things getting to. You used to work a little bit with the Venus Project, and you don't anymore. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
But because of your past work with them, people think you want everybody to live their lives inside of pods. And I just want to make sure, can we masturbate in the pods?
Yeah, well, there will be a 1984 style Big Brother camera at all times, though. So there will be the guy looking at the big masturbation wall somewhere.
Right.
Just keep that in mind.
So I just wanted you to respond to that, because I know a lot of your critics love to be like, oh, he wants us entrapped in pods and.
Well, yeah. Again, these ideas go back a long way, and they have nothing to do with the design per se. You want efficient design, and that takes many forms. It's completely contingent upon the technology available. It has nothing to do with any particular design. So people need to just get the visual images out of their head if they've been burnt in and they see some kind of sterile environment designed by a futurist or an architect. That has nothing to do with it. It's the principles that matter.
Right. I wanted to ask you, and this is the only question when I was interviewing Chris Hedges where he seemed a little cagey and kind of skirted around it. Do you have hope, and what do you see? What are the things you see that are hopeful in our society? I know you could list 100,000 that are not so hopeful, but I do wonder if you see some little sparks here and there.
Absolutely. If as negative as the majority of the trends are, there's one amazing trend, and that's the march of human ingenuity, the incredible intellect and problem-solving capacity we have, specifically as we create advanced technologies that help ease our lives, easing labor, creating more sustainable. I mean, we've overcome the Malthusian problem, which used to be a big thing, and that's powerful. This thing called ephemeralization, we do more and more and more with less and less and less as time moves forward. Jeremy Rifkin calls it the zero marginal cost society, which we're hyperbolating towards. He has a different view, but that's the same idea. And this is the most powerful trend that we've ever stumbled upon as human beings, and it's what needs to be harnessed and what could make one of the most glorious glorious societies. I would never use the word utopia because there's no such thing, but talk about some type of improvement that's so grand that really frees the human spirit. They can people can actually do what they are interested in doing, not locked into debt and wage slavery as we are today in this echo of a slavery system. It's really just a soft slavery system.
Well, and it's amazing to see, because you see a lot of the defense of the current system comes from those slaves. I mean, you see these are low-wage workers that are yelling at each other about how, they want a $15 minimum wage. I started at $7 and I worked my way up. It's amazing to see the slaves try and put everybody back in their place.
And that's an educational problem. I absolutely agree. And that's one of the reasons you don't educate slaves. I mean, even back in real slave time, it was illegal in the American South for a slave to be able to read. And Frederick Douglass, of course, one of the great abolitionists, talks about this at length, how the psychology of that underclass was so groomed to feel defeated, to not understand what's happening, to begin to have animosity towards each other, to the old divide and conquer attribute. So yeah, no, I completely understand that. That is unfortunate when you see people that don't have any idea what the real problem is.
So I'm going to wrap it up here in a minute, but you got the Zeitgeist movies out there, and the Culture in Decline is all online as well. You've created. What are you working on now?
Now it's Inner Reflections, the Inner Reflections trilogy. It will be released one a year, or they will be released one a year. And it's a rather abstract kind of journey through human culture.
Thank God you're finally getting abstract, Peter.
Yes. It's going to be fun, though. It's really a huge project, but I think people are going to really enjoy it. And they're going to really get a deeper sense of my original intentions when it comes to socially conscious media, because the documentary stuff was good, but it wasn't really my home. I felt like I was trying to appease a style that already existed. So now I'm throwing caution to the wind and just doing a completely creative type of concept, very relevant, full of important information, but it's going to be very surprising to those that are fans prior. Some of them will get it, some of them won't, but I don't care. My intention is just to do exactly what I think needs to be done in this type of communication, and to stir up the shit. So we'll see what happens. But hopefully by the end of this year, early next year, the first one will be out.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Peter Joseph, creator of the Zeitgeist movies and the movement that has spawned off of them. And now some upcoming movies. Very cool stuff you're working on. Thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you, Lee. I really appreciate it.
All right.